Hi everyone, Laura Renner here, the founder of Freedom Makers. We're going live a little bit early today because I do have a lunch that I will be attending. So you will be with me there in spirit while I attend that lunch. But today we're going to talk about ways to truly measure your success as a small business owner. And this idea was inspired by The Lean Startup. It's a book by Eric Ries that I just finished reading. It came out a few years ago, I think 2011, but I just read it. And I was really moved by, it is focused on tech startups, but I think there are parts of it that are certainly applicable to small business owners. And one of them is around this idea of vanity metrics versus actionable metrics. And so if you think about it for the purposes of a small business, think about the kind of metrics that are out there, like when you attend a bookkeeping class or any kind of accounting class really, or anything about business, any type of business course, they talk about, the metrics of measurement to know how successful you are. And they could even be KPIs or key performance indicators. And so there's always these things that you're supposed to be doing to measure the success of your business, right? And they always say, know your numbers. And it's like, what does that even mean? Especially if you're a micro business where knowing your numbers is you literally know your numbers because you know your bank account, right? So how critical is that? And so I thought what Eric Ries was pointing out in his book is that isn't necessarily applicable to small business owners, right? And in our blog, I gave the example of an aircraft carrier. And we've used this example before in the past where big businesses are like aircraft carriers and small businesses are like speedboats. And a lot of the business education or the way we talk about business are in the context of an aircraft carrier or of a large business. And so if you are looking at the standard metrics to measure your business, they're going to be in that context of an aircraft carrier, which those metrics aren't necessarily going to apply to a speedboat. And specifically, what Reese talks about is in businesses that size, it's the incremental improvements lead to results and they yield results. And so you want to make, because everything is so set, everything has been tested for years. And so if you make this one little change over time, it's going to lead to more results. So in that case, harder work does lead to more work or more results. And in his case, for a tech startup, your engineers could be working as hard as possible and they're doing a great job. But if you're measuring the wrong things, then you don't know that work is not leading to the success you're looking for, right? So in a tech startup, hard work doesn't necessarily lead to more results like it would in an established business. And that was the point he was trying to make. And I would argue the same could be said for small businesses, that doing things the way a big business does isn't going to necessarily lead to optimized results. It just creates more work for you, right? And I've seen that with people, especially when they're starting out, where they feel like they have to work 8 hours a day or 9 to 5 because that's the definition of success. And it is in a corporate environment, but it's not when you're working alone. And in fact, I was talking to someone about this yesterday, where I think the statistic is an average person in an office job works really 3 hours a day, even though they're there for 8 hours. And it's because of all the interruptions and just the water cooler talk and things like that and pointless meetings. So when you don't have that and you only need to work 3 hours a day to get as much done, but you feel like you're not working enough because you're only working 3 hours a day, right? So that's an example that's not in our blog, but an example of a vanity metric of, did I work my 8 hours a day? Or if you're in the hustle mindset, did I work my 12 to 15 hours a day while I get this business going? And that's a vanity metric. It's not really indicative of the success or the input versus output relationship. So if you think about it more like, okay, when you're using corporate metrics to compare your business, you're basically using aircraft carrier metrics to measure the success of a speedboat, right? So a speedboat is not going to be successful as an aircraft carrier, right? And it's that same idea. And so as a small business owner, I challenge you to think about that. Like, how do you define success? And are those vanity metrics truly measuring your definition of success, right? So an example is top line revenue. I would argue that that's a vanity metric. And indeed, Michael Olowitz from Profit First and Toilet Paper Entrepreneur, that's what he argues. Top line revenue is not an indicator. An example might be, let's say you have a law firm that makes $1 million a year in sales, right? In billable hours, makes $1 million a year, but they have 3 attorneys that each make $200,000 a year. So really, or $300,000 a year. So really, they only have $100,000 left over after they've paid their attorneys. And so then, Mike would call that real revenue, right? But then if you have a law firm that makes $500,000 a year and they only have 1 attorney that they're paying $300,000 to, now their real revenue is $200,000, right? So in reality, using actionable metrics, the smaller law firm is more successful than the larger law firm because they have more real revenue, right? And but using a vanity metric, we think the bigger law firm is more successful because they've had more in top line revenue. So that's an example. Another one might be number of new clients. That might seem like a big deal, but how many of them are actually becoming long-term clients or are the right kind of client you're looking for? So is a number of new clients a vanity metric or an actual actionable metric? I once had a coach say to me, when we first started, we were actually a temp agency, and so we broke 100,000 in revenue pretty quickly because we're paying for, and people are paying us to take care of their employees, right, or to provide them with employees. So she was like, "Oh, you should be proud. You broke 6 figures in a couple months," and it's like, but we weren't even actually profitable because we didn't charge enough over what we were paying the employees. So it was, something like, I don't know, some small percentage, let's just say 10% of our revenue was actual real revenue, but she wanted me to be proud of that top line revenue. It never sat with me. It just never sat well. And so that's my point is, top line revenue is certainly a vanity metric. So then seriously consider, how do you define success and how can you measure that in a way that is an actionable metric, right? So some ideas might be, as I mentioned, real revenue. So check out, in our blog, we have a link to a website that defines what real revenue is by how Mike Makowalowicz defines it. Lifetime value of a client might be important. Like, how long does a client stay with you? How much do you make off of a client over time on average? Another might be client balance. Let's say you have clients that are individual clients. You also do workshops. You also have corporate clients. You maybe sell ads on your products type thing. And so then which one do you want to do more of, and therefore should be a higher percentage of the balance of your clients? And so that might be a thing to measure as well. So those are some ideas. And in our case at Freedom Makers, what we measure for success is number of hours sold, because clients prepay for their hours and the hours never expire. So we don't necessarily need to measure how many hours worked, because that could vary depending on when the client has worked for their Freedom Maker, since the hours never expire. So rather, we measure how many hours were sold as our measure of success. And we don't look at revenue as a measurement of success because, especially while we were getting started, we were experimenting really with pricing, figuring out what price the market would accept, and also what could we afford as far as what we pay our Freedom Makers versus what we charge. And so, I can't say, oh, well, our revenue increased this year over that year, because was that due to more hours sold, or was that due to us raising our prices? You know what I mean? So it's not really relevant, an actionable metric for us. It might look good. Oh, we had this much growth in revenue, but really that doesn't necessarily mean the business was growing. It just means we changed our pricing structure, right? And so for us, it's what we measure is number of hours sold, because then it doesn't matter what our price is. It doesn't matter what we pay our Freedom Makers. It doesn't matter necessarily how much our Freedom Maker worked. I mean, of course, all that matters, but it doesn't matter for a measurement of how we are succeeding or how we're growing. What really matters is, did we sell more hours than we did last year? Because that is a true indication of our growth. So I hope that makes sense. Like that is an actual metric, whereas revenue is maybe a vanity metric, and hours worked is an important metric, but it's not necessarily a measurement of our success. So I hope that makes sense. Check out our blog for more information. And if you certainly want to have a conversation about more detail about what is an actionable metric versus a vanity metric, feel free to comment and we can engage in conversation about that. But most importantly, I challenge you to consider what is a metric for your success, and therefore how would you measure that? What is the true metric, the actionable metric for your success? So if you come up with that and you want to share that, we'd love to hear that as well. In the meantime, have a great rest of your Thursday, and we will see you next week in February. Take care. Bye-bye.